Today's date is August 22nd, 2017. My lesson here is the Book of God. And just listen to this a little bit. It's just some thoughts here, and it's about what we call the Bible today. There's some thoughts to get you thinking as you study. But yeah, just thinking about the Bible, I noted, as some have said, the most ancient Israelites did not have this very important book, the scrolls we call the Bible today, and many of them were actually illiterate. See, some of us don't realize that. I think Israelite kingdom and Hebrew, bad Hebrew, and every Israelite could read and write, and they're at university level and so on. Most Israelites, from what I'm noticing so far in my little puny studies, never ever met a priest, like a high priest. Never spent personal time with a high priest to talk to them the way you can talk to your camp teacher or call up your Christian pastor, stuff like that. Most of them didn't have this time with the priests and with the prophets. And we're like, prophets are all around them and so on. We think they're sitting down with a prophet anytime they want. Doesn't seem to be that was the way it was. The first book given to Moses when he went up to the mountain at Sinai, it was broken. He broke it. As he came down, saw the people worshipping golden calves, transgressing and so on. So he broke the book, as if to say book is a problem, but maybe it's just that it was the sin that was the problem. So, okay, you can kind of excuse that one. Even primitive peoples, though, did not have this book we call the Bible. And one wonders how in the world they ever pleased God. Wonder if that's why he ended up destroying the world with the flood. It's like, you might think it's kind of funny or I'm trivializing the whole thing, but if we cannot get by a day without this Bible, how did they live without it? How? How did they please the Creator before Earth's demise, like in the flood and so on, right? But way back at some early point, as some believe, people were sinless and were experts at pleasing God with no book, with no scrolls. So if you're one of those who believe man created in Genesis chapter 1 was just mankind in general, like a lot of people created in one shot, then they were living, serving the Creator with no book. And then if you just believe that was just Adam at first and then Eve came and then they had children after that, and that's where people came from, then still at least Adam and Eve, they served the Most High at first for however long it was or however short it was, with still no book. You might focus on the fall that they sinned in the garden, but they still lived a while without transgressing. And they accomplished that with no scrolls, no book. See, you must question things, right? And that's why I'm making this little lesson here. This most important book has to be purchased in a store. And many on the earth who cannot do so, who don't have the money, who don't have stores and shops where they are, up in some mountains or some desert areas or wherever they live, or some quote-unquote backward places on earth, in some jungles they live in, wherever, many of these people cannot buy this book we call the Bible. So then, if this book is about God's instructions, A lot of these people on the earth have no way to know God, or at least His specific instructions. Hear about all these pygmy peoples and the click sound and so on that they make. Or how did these people? You think if they get $20 now, they're going to try to buy a Bible? In some of these remote places where they're struggling in the desert and it's a lot of drought all the time, they'd probably run and try to buy a bucket of water or some food and so on for their children, while they try to eat and drink while fanning flies from their wounds and from their mouth and so on. They're not going to take that $20 and run and go and buy a Bible. But here in the built-up world, if you don't have a Bible to read to follow God, that your enemies who drop bombs and kill people all over the world published and give you that book, you don't feel you can know God and please Him. Have you ever thought of that? The same people who have massacred and killed millions strategically. Notice how strategic killing is done across the earth. It is done in people groups, and it is done based on religions and beliefs and so on. Where if you have certain kinds of beliefs, you are systematically killed when your time comes. Or if you are in certain geographical areas, you're systematically wiped out slowly, and then they focus on certain cults or certain religions and they kill you, and then another time you are killed because they want the land to maybe create a new river, and so people in certain areas, they just get killed because they're sitting on the land, and so on and so forth. Or you got some natural resources and only you alone are killed. Your people alone are killed in that whole land. So the rest of the land is fine, but because you're living on that part, you're dead. And all your people are wiped out. And the few trickle who survive get relocated. And so systematically people are killed based on the kind of knowledge or education that they have. They're wiped out. And so on. They're killed because of religious beliefs. They're wiped out. And they're killed in order to hide and destroy and confiscate ancient relics and religious artifacts and so on that might help to prove other things about who these people really are who are doing all this wickedness in the earth and so on. Like now they're bombing in Syria, fulfilling Isaiah 17 verse 1, Damascus is going to become a rubble and so on. You notice that they are going in and destroying some what you would call religious artifacts and so on that help to paint a better picture of the ancient world, that you can help to identify things in the Bible and so on, right? They're destroying all those things, breaking them up. You see that? And so these wars are fought to accomplish specific things. Specific things. But these people who do these great wars are the same people who print a book of God and sell it to you, and they make profit off of it. And Bibles are usually recommended for different countries to read, like the American Standard Bible, recommended for use in America. So if you're in America, that was what was recommended for you as a quote-unquote New World American to read. So now, finally, with my little thoughts here on the Book of God, this Creator of ours, according to the Bible that we have, like I said before, Adam didn't even tell us who he is. He didn't introduce himself to us in the opening verse. It just simply says that he created the heaven and the earth, that Elohim did it at least. He doesn't introduce himself to us properly. He doesn't introduce himself to Adam as far as the text is showing. Adam doesn't introduce him to us or introduce him to the world. Adam's relationship seems shady to him. But we can find stories of civilizations and societies 50,000 years ago with more information than we got from Adam, who supposedly lived probably 6,000 years ago. But this creator wrote this most important book, and he wrote it much later in time than Adam lived. So he didn't write the book for Adam, but apparently the finger of God wrote, and he wrote it for Moses. So a couple thousand years later, the creator wrote according to current world information and the Bible and so on. So he wrote this most important book and wrote it later in time, seemingly after Adam was long dead and gone, and wrote it for Moses. He did not start writing this book to present it to Adam. He did it much later, after Adam died and after many thousands and thousands and thousands and many thousands of people had died. Many people lived and died and never had this book to find God and his instructions. And then he writes it for Moses to give to the children of Israel. And after he writes this book, he says, Moses, put this stuff in the ark, this copy of this book. But even though he wrote this very important book so late in time, after many people had lived and died and never had a chance to read it, then eventually the book gets lost. And then the same people who are bombing the world and killing anyone they please with laws that allow them to do this, these same people tell you, oh, we found the book of God. A boy found it. A Bedouin boy trying to find his lost goat, threw a stone into a cave, dealing with the Qumran caves, and found the Dead Sea Scrolls when he threw a stone into this particular cave and heard a smash, a broken vase, and there they found the scrolls, and the book God gave was found. And this is the story they give to us. And now the modern world, who care very little about finding God, we now have the Bible. But the people who were more concerned about the Creator initially before man got so depraved, although that happened very fast, those people, or at least Adam and Eve, they were able to find God. And you notice that it says, there's a certain point, and men began to call upon the name of the Lord, and they never had a book. Let me find that one for you. Actually, it's funny here. In Genesis chapter 5, verse 1, it says, "This is the book of the generations of Adam, in the day that Elohim created man. In the likeness of Elohim made he him." It's just funny that they use this word, the book, as if it is necessary to refer to the recollection of these events in a documented manner in what you can consider a book, showing you that care was taken to make note of these things, so that one can be sure and ascertain certain facts and histories and so on. But somehow, initially, no one was concerned with writing a book about what the Creator discussed with Adam, and to tell us exactly where Adam left and went to when he was put out the garden, and exactly where Cain went when he went to the land, this mysterious land of Nod. All these are important things. And then you hear people keep saying, children of Cain are here today. Yet, it seems we are told by the text itself that all these people died who was of the line of Cain. In Noah's flood, they would have been all wiped out in the flood. But many Bible teachers teach passionately that Cain's children is still around, and that they were even in the tribes of Israel and so on as priests and so on. Look in Genesis 4 verse 26. At a time when there was no book of instruction from God. So they say. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. Men began. How can men begin to do this at that time? Who was instructing them, and how did they know how to call upon the Lord and what to call him? When there was no book, and who was the teacher? And people are going to teach you, because I've heard all the teachings about the lineage of the Shemites and so on or whatever. But you notice in this lineage, it turns out to be that the man that the so-called Abrahamic religions are built off, Abraham, if the stuff was being passed on, how come Abraham had no clue? He was learning from his forefathers and so on, but he had no clue of the Most High, to the point where he was in a house of idolatry and was serving many idols. He was an idol worshipper, just like his father. And you're going to say, well, he wasn't actually an idol worshipper. It was his father who was an idol worshipper. Well, if the story goes, if it's true that he was feeding the idols, then what's he doing? He's serving idols. And if you're serving idols, what are you doing? The same thing when you're serving God. You're worshiping God. So if you're serving idols, you are worshiping idols. But men began to call upon the name of the Most High. So you see what I'm saying to you here, people? If you think of it, there has to be stuff missing from the book if the book is of the Most High. It is very unclear. It is very incomplete. It has to be. Now, of course, I know everything can't be included, because it would just be too much to write and too much to include and so on. It's just telling you more of the important things in summary form in the Bible. Yeah, so I get that. I understand. But still, you have to see that things are missing from this book of God. Too many things happen in very unclear ways to make this book look like God wrote it in this exact kind of way. Too many things. Too many things are way too unclear. And millions of people have read the Bible and studied the Bible and lived and died and never figured out certain key and basic questions. The very first chapter that opens the Bible, the chapter 1 from Genesis, has unclear things about it. Now, some of the mysterious things, the creation of the earth and certain things like that, you can understand, because there's no way you're going to get no full, proper, deep explanation of those things, because those things are just, as much as he says he made this and he made that, they're still so mysterious, you know. But I mean, things like this: God never identifies himself as Yahweh or as the God of the Israelites and so on, but you'll say because that came later on. Nobody was called Israelite at that point. So okay, I understand. But if you go down to verse 26 and 27, it's telling you that he made man, and to this day No expert satisfies the world between chapter 1 and chapter 2 with the explanation of man being created as a single man and then Eve came, or many men created at the same time, men and women, as like a whole population. As they battle back and forth, chapter 1 means this and chapter 2 means that, and chapter 1 was whatever and chapter 2 was the single man Adam and whatever and blah blah. The book is very unclear. How do you write this book if you are the creator and give it to the earth in such a way that makes even university professors and all kinds of people who want to find God look at the Bible and get disgusted and frustrated because when they read the book from the most wise creator who used Torah wisdom to create the world, and his Torah opens up with confusion. You think God wrote that? Well, when the same Torah says the finger of God wrote and he gave to Moses, it looks like when he came down with the instructions, what we call the 10 commandments, Israelites were able to understand those commandments. God wrote that and it was clear what he expected of them and they could understand it. And all of us who study the commandments can explain those 10 commandments. But God wrote chapter 1 of Genesis and chapter 2 and we're struggling still, buying commentary after commentary, searching so much to find out what the opening chapter and chapters mean. And you're telling me God did that? It may well be that he gave Moses stuff, and of course I believe that. But did he give it in just this way? Or did someone tamper with it? And don't be quick to curse me out because I'm now collecting stuff to show the different people who show that the Bible has been tampered with. Even among our Hebrew Israelites who taught us. They teach that themselves. So I'm not telling you to throw out the Bible. I'm just trying to say, if you are not questioning and re-questioning things, and because you know this answer for 5 years, you're not going to study it anymore. No, I don't look at it like that. I constantly re-study and search over and over and over. Every 4 months or thereabouts, I listen to everything I ever learned from every Israelite camp and every teacher who wasn't running a camp and so on, and everything I learned from anybody who wasn't an Israelite, but stuff I studied about the Bible when I left the Christian church and so on in order to understand Torah and so on. Everything on every topic that I did initially. Every 4 months I listen and learn and relearn the same things over again. And I just started that 4 month I just started again this past week listening over again to every single topic that I've studied in the Bible again and about science and the word and so on as it relates to biblical things. Why? Because I realized when I first learned of these Israelite teachers, and that's what led me to leave the Christian church. After a while, I got to seeing that at first they were very impressive. You Israelite, you're black, you Israelite, you're black, you Israelite, you're black. But a large number of them don't graduate past that. I'm not saying they shouldn't teach that a lot because that message needs to go out to our people, needs to go out into the airwaves. So awesome. But what I find is that there are certain things that they never change from, even though it's very unclear. Even though it's very clear that they need to change certain things. It's clear, but it's like they're stuck. Like a broken record in the old time days and it just keeps going over the same part of the song. And they never move from it. So I don't want to be like that. So I said every 4 months I'm going to listen and relearn everything. You know why? This is why I do it. And I may have said this before a couple months ago. And you'd be well advised to do this as well as I close. Is that the more I listen to the same thing over and over again, and then I study, and then I go back and I listen to everything over and over again. Like, let's say now, I don't know how many stuff I downloaded over the past 3.5 years or so from these Torah teachings and so on. let's say I have 1,000 videos that I have downloaded, like I put them on my phone, right, in MP3 form. Let's say I listen to 1,000 of them. Every 4 months, I go back and listen to those 1,000, even though I know those topics very well that they're teaching. Why? Because between the 4 month period and the next 4 month period, I'm learning and studying new things. I'm digging and I'm searching. And after I learn a certain amount, I go back and I re-listen again to see if the new information that I'm learning still can stand up well with what I have learned in the past that I thought was true. Because it may be that I may need to change my assumptions in the new things I'm learning based on the older things that I've learned. It may also be that I need to upgrade or change the old things that I learned because of the new information I've studied between those 4 month periods. You see that? You cannot continue to be the same you were 5 years ago in this truth. You must learn new things and then use new things to reevaluate old things and old things to evaluate the new things you are learning, and try to find the things that make common sense but blend with the Torah as well, and try to test the Torah. If you cannot test the Torah for yourself, you're going to end up in a bad spot one day, or at least you're only going to end up being led. And when somebody wants to lead you the wrong way for their own selfish reason or just because they are wrong, you're just going to go in the wrong path without control over where you are going. Study and learn for yourself, rethink, recollect, dig, search, reevaluate. The people who destroyed the world and continue to destroy, and the same people who will be going down to the valley of Jehoshaphat for their prescribed destruction because the Most High is angry at them, those same people are the ones who run the publishing companies in the world who give you the Bible.